Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episode of Stranger Things, Season 3, Episode 1, Suzie, Do You Copy? So I'm super excited to start this, kind of. When the first two seasons came out, I watched it right away as soon as it did. And then just this year is when I started doing these reviews. And so this is actually technically the first series or show that I'm going to do without ever never watching it. Like all of Star Trek I've watched, James Bond, Doctor Who, stuff like that. I've already watched it, and so doing these reviews, it's doing a rewatch. Whereas Stranger Things, doing the reviews for seasons 1 and 2, were a rewatch. Whereas this is all brand new material. So this is like first reaction type stuff. This is like me not knowing the end. I've tried my best to avoid spoilers. So I'm kind of excited to kind of go through this with you guys. But I'm also a little scared because I'll just make up random stuff and you guys will be like, no, you're wrong, because you already know what's going to happen before I do. So, from the very beginning with the scientists opening up of the portal, because these guys never learn that, and we see them open the portal, and like the vines start coming out, and then it blows up. It kind of reminded me of The Watchmen, just the kind of the way it was shot, where it was very slow motion and kind of the way the camera pans. I don't know, it just had like a Zack Snyder feel, probably because it was slow motion. We realized that they're Russians, and so already this has it's like Stranger Things International. There's the new character, I'm assuming he's going to be an important character, but the younger scientist who, for like that whole sequence, I was like, oh, that's the dude from like Ready Player One, and like he's the new Cyclops in the X-Men movies and stuff like that. No, it's not. I had to look it up. It's totally not even him. So I was way off there already. We see Mike and Eleven making out, and Hopper's reaction to that. Let me tell you, like, I am not a dad. I don't have kids. But, like, the whole scene where he sees them making out, and then he, like, bangs the door open, and they're like, what? I was like, get your shit and get out. Like, he just plays it off like, oh, you guys weren't doing anything. So that kind of annoyed me. Steve is working at an ice cream parlor. Like, that's just kind of awkward to me, but we kind of get more about that later in the episode. Watching, like, the whole power go out, which is kind of interesting, because we see the kids use Steve, because he's, like, their pseudo-dad at this point, to sneak them into Day of the Dead, I think it was. And, like, the power goes out, and Will has, like, the flashes of the smoke monster, so that was kind of interesting. Jonathan and Nancy are, like, spending the night together at the Briar's place, so that was a little intense to see, like, how fast their relationship, and it's continuing. Like, Nancy just completely left Steve in the dust and is just with Jonathan now. Which kind of brings back to, like, how was the pullout joke? Like, evidently it was really good because they're still together. When you fall in love, so I like the scene where, like, because Will says, like, oh, that's gross, because they know that Nancy was sleeping the night and they're just pretending that she wasn't. And I thought it was really interesting that Joy says, well, when you fall in love, you won't think it's so gross. But she doesn't say when you fall in love with a girl. Like, it's never said or anything. It's just very ambiguous. Because throughout the whole series, like, it's very implied that Will might not be straight. So I think that's kind of interesting. Dustin coming back from, like, whatever nerd camp he went to, and just like, goddamn gold leader returning to base. I was like, that's kind of great. Like, I really enjoyed that. And just the Star Wars jokes in general. And the toys coming alive, like, for a split second, it was kind of creepy watching them all come alive. And I was like, and he's freaked out. And I was like, dude, you have a friend. That's telekinetic. Like, how is this weird to you? And sure enough, it's all of them, like, trying to scare him and welcome him home. And then poor Lucas just gets, like, Farrah Fawcett hairspray right to the eyes. And what's like, that whole scene was funny. Like, it played off great for jokes. But, like, I would have sprayed, and then as they're screaming to each other, like, let go instantly. Like, it would not be this long, full 30 seconds spraying. Like, it was overkill and for the joke. Billy is evidently a lifeguard now. Still, when did he become, like, the sex symbol? Because I know in the second season, like, he was just batshit crazy. And, like, Steve was still supposed to be, like, the sexy character with the hair and all that stuff. But I never thought of Billy. Like, he had the scene with Mrs. Wheeler, but there was, like, I don't know. I thought it was just really weird where, like, all these women are just looking at Steve, or at Billy. And I'm like, when did he become that character? Like, it just kind of was odd to me. We see that the town is actually going out of business due to this mall, which is something I'm kind of interested in because, I mean, this takes place in the 80s. I was not quite alive when this episode came out. I think this was 85, I think. And so I think, like, I'm curious how malls affected small town cities because, I mean, I've always lived in kind of big cities, so I don't really know. So that's kind of interesting. Seeing Hopper and Joyce have their, like, parental talk-to-talk where Hopper's like, what do I do about this weasel Mike dating my daughter? Which is kind of interesting that he just calls 11 his daughter now, even though her name is still 11, which is kind of weird to me. And Joyce tries to give the motherly, well, you just got to talk to him like you're, like, peers and stuff like that. And he's like, no, can't do that. Let's see. Dustin makes Cerebro, which is a great X-Men reference, which I'm kind of curious if they have to pay rights to use all these references or not. Ends up being a radio tower so he can call his girlfriend Suzie from Utah, which, I don't know, I'm a big musical guy, so as soon as he's like, oh yeah, I have a girlfriend, she lives in Utah and she's Mormon, like, I just got, like, flashes of Avenue Q with my girlfriend who lives in Canada, and so I thought that was kind of funny. Like, I really enjoyed it. We see Steve trying to, like, flirt with women while working at an ice cream parlor, and it's just not working, which is where the meme comes from, with the girl holding the sign up. And then, like, you can see all sorts of stuff. Like, a lot, the most popular is probably, like, Stranger Things is for people who like X-Files that also like the Goonies or something. But anyways, he's 0 for 7 for flirting with women. So clearly, like, Steve has taken a step down from being the sex symbol of the series. I hated the scene with the rats going to the warehouse. And, like, at first I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then they, like, go downstairs and then they just start exploding. I was like, oh, like, it's really sad. And they, like, start screaming and, like I have a pet rat and, like, I don't know. Like, I couldn't do it. Like, it was too much for me. Billy trying to get Mrs. Wheeler to go with him to Motel 6 was just awful. Like, I hated it. At first it was kind of funny. Like, the second season was, like, a great, cute little moment. But this one was just awkward, where he's just like, I could teach you how to do the breaststroke at the Motel 6 pool. And it's like, nah, nope, can't do it. We just see Dustin trying over and over and over again to, like, Suzie, do you copy? Which is where the title comes from. And they have this whole, like, 11 and Mike have to go because of curfew and how, like, bullshit that is because they just want to go make out. I mean, yeah, they're teenagers. I guess it kind of makes sense. Hopper was terrifying in that scene, though, where he's like, your mom called, because Mike's being a little dick, and where he's, like, whispering in Eleven's ear, and he's like, I think we're in trouble, and then he's like, your mom called, it's your grandma, we gotta go. And then finally, where he just lashes out at Mike, like, I loved it. I thought it was great, and it was exactly what Mike needed. So, I don't know, I was pretty down for it. And then finally, like, all of the series, this series really follows a textbook, but it still does it really well. And so the cliffhanger to get us to go into the next episode is Billy on his way to see Mrs. Wheeler, and, like, his car crashes, and he just gets sucked down this tube, like, to the warehouse where the rats were exploding. So it was like, damn, like, that's terrifying. So overall, like, I thought it was a good episode. It really sets up some interesting characteristics and some character plot points. Like, clearly Nancy is going to become, like, some sort of detective throughout this, where she's just getting trampled on as being the secretary, but then she takes out the rat's disease note. Overall, I'm super excited to watch this season. I've tried so hard to avoid spoilers, so I'm really excited. For those who have seen this episode, what did you guys think? Go ahead, let me know, and I will see you guys next time for Mallrats.